On most modern Hyundais, they will have something called a drive mode. So this is an Ioniq 6. If you look down here, there's a button called drive mode, and you can see the dash is actually changing when I press it. We're moving from eco to normal to sport. So in this video, I'm going to show you what the differences are between them. Some people would ask, why would you bother changing the drive modes? Two reasons. Depends on the conditions you're driving in, and the other thing is it depends on mood you're in as well. So it really depends what car you're in. So this one is a Tucson. It has drive mode. So by pulling that, you can see in this case I've got options of eco or I've got options of sport. Something like this newer generation SX2 Kona, I'm twisting here and you can see I have more options. So I've got eco, I've got normal, I've got sport, and I've got snow. And slightly different on something like this Santa Fe, then we've got this button here and that will go between eco, sport, and in the Santa Fe you get My Drive. My Drive allows you to select your own variations of things, so you can have the powertrain in eco, sport, or smart, or you can have the steering in normal or sport. Let's start off in eco. So I'll press the button once, you can see eco comes up on the screen and we get a different display. Essentially what's happening when you're on eco mode, the accelerator is basically at its least responsive level, so you might actually have to push the accelerator down a bit further, and the air conditioner performance is reduced. One thing on this is, even though it might still look like you're in eco mode, if the engine temperature or the coolant temperature is really, really low in the winter, or if you're actually going up a hill I suppose where the car's under a little bit more pressure, it may no longer use eco mode. It might revert back into normal mode, even though it looks like on your dash it's still in eco mode. So there are just two kind of limitations of it. But to simplify, basically, if your throttle is less responsive, you're not demanding as much power. So in other words, you're not using as much fuel. And if the air conditioner is not working as hard, again, that's putting less load on the electrical system and also on the engine as well, resulting in better efficiency for fuel or electricity, depending on the powertrain of the car. Some cars will have a normal mode. So again, press the button. We're going to toggle into normal. Normal is going to give you exactly what the car was designed to do. It's going to give you the normal level of throttle response. It's going to give you normal air conditioning response. And if it's an automatic car with gears, it's going to give you the normal level of how the shift pattern would work. So it's middle of the road, straightforward driving. All the cars that have drive mode options are going to have a sport mode. Sport mode essentially is giving you a much snappier throttle response, and if you have a car with automatic gears, it's going to leave the car in gear for longer when you're driving, so it won't upshift as quick. It doesn't give you more power per se, but the throttle is way more responsive. One point to note on the sport mode is that every time you turn off the car, sport mode, it'll end up going back into normal. So every time you want to use sport, you have to activate it during that actual drive. Okay, so a couple of less common modes. This is a 2020 through 2022 Santa Fe. So that's got a smart mode, okay? So you'll see along here, eco, sport, and then smart. The smart mode will alternate between eco and also sport. So if it's basically, I suppose, sensing that you have very little steering input and very gentle throttle inputs, it'll go for eco mode. But if it feels that you're fairly aggressively accelerating regularly and you have a lot of inputs on the steering wheel, it'll go into sport mode. And so things like basically the throttle response is more sharp, as we talked about. But the other thing as well is, like what we said as well before, the gears will tend to stay in lower gears for longer, so that's kind of better for when you want to get ready to overtake something. But then in that exact drive cycle, if you decide to start driving a little bit more easy, eventually it could push you back into eco, which will soften the throttle responses and put the gears changing a little bit earlier for fuel economy. The last mode is on these newer Santa Fe's, but it will come into other models again, and that's basically My Drive. So actually on some of the electric cars like the Ioniq, you can access a My Drive mode by this button here. So we've used that already, but if we hold that down, 1, 2, 3, you can see it's brought us into My Drive mode. And then basically you go into settings and you go into vehicle and you go into drive mode, and then you can customize it here. So small little cog up here to change what way you want the power output, the acceleration sensitivity, and even the steering as well. Whereas on this Santa Fe, it's controlled from down here, party. And then over here, we need to move into settings. And then we need to go into vehicle. And then we want to go to drive mode. And then we have a My Drive mode. And then that means so I can have the gearbox in an eco mode or a sporty mode or a smart mode that we talked about. So that's basically the whole powertrain, including throttle response and gearbox. And then also on this one, on other models, we used to have an independent button for how heavy or light we want the steering. Up here on the screen, we can have a normal steering, which is, reasonably light, or we can have a sport one, which is a little bit more heavy and gives more feedback. So it's more for driving pleasure. So actually one mode I completely forgot about on some of the cars, a lot of the time on EVs, is a snow mode. So back into vehicle once more, back into drive mode and customize that, and then snow. So motor transmission are optimized for hazardous driving, and what happens is you're dampened in terms of the responses. So wheel rotation is assessed like every 0.2 of a second. If it's a 4-wheel drive, it'll distribute power to different wheels to maintain grip. If it's a 2-wheel drive vehicle, it'll still do things like, we'll say, dampening how aggressive your throttle input can be, and also if it has regenerative braking like an EV, it reduces how aggressive that can actually be. So it means it won't be as intrusive. So it's basically dampening your braking and accelerating inputs to maintain grip. So that should cover most of the drive modes on a Hyundai. So if you haven't used them before, or if you're unfamiliar with them, hopefully the video's been useful. Hopefully you'll get to start using them. And if you have any questions or queries, let me know in the comment section. Thanks a million for taking time to watch.